Good afternoon or good morning, as it could be wherever you happen to be. My name is Keene. I am one of the co-leads for the Noyce program at the National Science Foundation, and we are so excited to have you here with us today. Thank you for coming. Of course, it's not what we had hoped. It's not what we had planned on, but we're trying to make the best of it, and I'm so happy to have you all joining us. Just a quick note, can we move the slides, please? We're at what's called a Zoom webinar, and it kind of has some special things for it compared to other just regular Zoom meetings, which we all have been living on for the last few months. So the chat function will be for technical support. So you can look in the chat, and if you have some issues, please reach out and ask for Zoom/Lindsay. And if you're having technical issues like you can't hear, you can't see, use that. If you want to ask a question, a Q&A question, you can send that in the Q&A function. And you can ask us privately, you can ask us publicly, whatever you want. As a matter of fact, if you're asking questions, you might want to ask them to the whole group if possible, so that we can, other people could also agree with that. We're trying to squeeze in what normally would have been a 3-hour session into a 2-hour session. So we're going to be providing a lot of information, and I will be actually behind the scenes answering Q&As, and Lindsay will be behind the scenes answering technical issues. Okay, next slide, please. So this is the new awardee session. If you're here, you are probably a PI, co-PI, or evaluator, who knows, from one of our new awards that we have made just this spring. We're so glad to have you. And this is a session where we're going to try to provide information that you might not have gotten during your negotiations and during your awarding. So we're really happy to have you. So I'm going to turn it over. We have 2 of our Noyce program officers, Kathleen Bergin and Jennifer Lewis, will be talking. And like I said, I will be watching and answering Q&As behind the scenes. If your questions do not get answered during this session, or if you would rather wait and ask your own individual program officer, then I would suggest that you just wait till the afternoon when you'll have a session with your PO at that time. New slide, please. Okay, I'm going to turn this over now to Jennifer, and welcome again. I'll join you briefly at the end. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. I am Jennifer Lewis. I'm another NSF program officer who has the good fortune to be assigned to the Noyce program. I'm really glad everyone was able to make the time to be here. And I hope you just take a minute right now and pat yourself on the back. You have a Noyce Award. Congratulations. Okay, now that's over. The work begins. And this session hopefully will help you get off to a really solid start as you look forward to the first year of your award. Next slide, please. So the first thing that we want to accomplish with this session is to give you a sense that Noyce is really a community of people. And some of the people you're going to get to know over the next few years as you continue to work on your Noyce project are the Noyce program officers. So here are our pictures. Some of us are using rather outdated pictures. I wonder if you can even find me in here. Next, could you take 30 seconds or so and see if you can match the name of the program officer to the picture? Again, 2 of us are showing, so hopefully we don't look too different from our pictures. And I'm hoping you recognize the name and you know which one is your cognizant program officer. That would be the person who worked with you to ask you questions about your proposal and to get the award processed. Next, so the names are going to start showing up here and you can see if you were correct. You can see there's me. I had shorter hair at the time. And Kathleen, her hair looks about the same. How does she do that? Next slide, please. So for the session this morning, we're going to take a nice chunk of time to go through just some basics about the Noyce program and the grantee responsibilities that hopefully will make your job easier as you begin to think about how to work with your award. You'll get to meet a couple of additional NSF staff who work on budgets, and they'll give you some basic tips as you think about your award budget and the allowable spending. And we'll close the morning session with a really important conversation about a major part of being in the Noyce community, and that's the Noyce annual survey. Then there'll be a break, and we'll go into the block party where you'll interact with the rest of the Noyce community, not just the new folks. Next slide, please. All right, first thing, if you have not already done this, and some of you may have, please make a note to go to the host website that AAAS has put together for the Noyce program. Every new project needs to register on this site. You'll want to, there's a lot of great information on this site, but also the site is used to communicate a lot of things, and your registration lets us know that you are getting those communications and you're being contacted. In order to register, there's a project locator tab on the site, and one of the links under that tab is to submit info, and there you'll find just a really brief fillable form where you can talk about what your project is, basic things like the title, the award number, the grade level, what track the project is, discipline areas, real basics. And then your project, once you've submitted that, will be, after a brief delay, will be then live on the site, and you'll be able to locate yourself, and other people will be able to locate you. The reason this is so important is that the Noyce community does a lot of collaborative work. And next slide, please. So it's very important that you think about reaching out if you have a question. No one in the Noyce community should be struggling alone to try to cope with an issue that's come up as they run their project. There's a wealth of resources to help you so that you have a successful experience. So that website is a good first place to find contact info for other projects like yours that might have useful information as you get your project up and running. And there's also some really interesting stuff there. The alumni profiles, for example, are really heartwarming and might be something that you want to share with your own Noyce scholars as your project is running. Of course, the NSF site has useful information about running your project, and we'll talk a little bit more about that during the rest of the morning. I want to also give a shout out to the regional Noyce conferences, which normally you'd attend in person. There's budget for you and scholars to actually attend these community building meetings. Your scholars can present. It's a really great experience. And I think if you go to the NSF Noyce website that's hosted by AAAS, you'll see that some of these conferences have been inventive. The Southeast, for example, is hosting things this summer on Thursdays to keep that Noyce community spirit going. And finally, later today, you'll be able to meet with other Noyce PIs and talk about things that are challenging and to try to get their ideas. And hopefully today you'll meet your Cognizant Noyce program officer. So I'm one of those. You saw the pictures of the rest of those. And I'll turn this over to Kathleen Bergin, who's the lead of the Noyce program, to talk more in detail about some of the nuts and bolts of administering a Noyce project. Next slide.
So welcome to you all, and hopefully you will find the information useful. Next slide. these slides will be available to you. So one of the sources and resources that you would have used is the Proposal and Awards Policies and Procedures Guide. We affectionately call it the PAPG. But this is also a place you'll want to go to now that you have been funded. So when you have some questions, sometimes you may want to go and look here, or you ought to go into the second part and read about what happens now that you have an award. But you're always welcome to ask your program officer any question that you have. Next. We want you to be familiar with reporting requirements. Most of this is done through research.gov. A few things persist in what's called fast lane, but that's slowly being phased out. But if you want to have a change in a PI or a co-PI, and that could be because you're adding some new expertise or because someone has left your institution, gone to another institution, you have to formally request that through research.gov. And when you do that, you'll include their CV, and you will include their current and pending. And by the way, remember that for your awards, at least one PI or co-PI has to be a STEM disciplinary faculty member, and at least one has to be an education faculty member. So if one of those two leaves, you want to make sure you still have at least one of those. If you need to change anything related to participant costs, well, actually, I would just say don't do that. But if you really do need to, you need to talk to your program officer first, and then any change has to be requested through research.gov. But you have to maintain, if you are track 1, 2, or 3, the 60% of the total direct cost. That's different for track 4s and capacity building. They don't have to worry about that. But everybody has to contact NSF through research.gov if they want to make changes to move money out of category F participant support. If you need a no cost extension, now you've just started, so you don't even need to worry about this. But sometimes towards the end of your award period, you find that you haven't recruited as many as you thought, or there's some reason you need to keep going. And you do this through research.gov. You request a grantee approved no cost extension for 1 year. And then if you find that you still need a little bit more time, you can talk to your program officer and request an NSF approved no cost extension. So if you currently have a 5-year award, if necessary, but not encouraged, but if necessary, it could go for 7 years. If you need to add a new sub-awardee, I'm not talking about changing the amount of money you're giving the sub-awardee, but a different sub-awardee, somebody that's another entity that's going to help do the work, that comes in as a request through research.gov. And that's where you're going to submit your annual reports. Yes, every year you will do an annual report. Next, please. So there are 4 types of reports. Everyone has to submit an annual report. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, if not during this session later on. Normally, you might not ever do an interim report, but sometimes the program officer may request an interim report. Your final report, which is at the end of your 5 years, or if you ask for a no-cost extension, your 6th year or your 7th year, is also submitted through research.gov. And a project outcome report is submitted towards the end of your project. However, if you're writing anything down, write this down. Do not submit the outcomes report until you are 175% sure that you have spent all the money you intend to spend and done all the things you intend to spend. Once that report comes in effect, your award is over. So hold off on that. Talk to your program officer if you need to. So your annual reports describe the progress you've made during the 12-month period. And this is submitted 90 days before your anniversary date. So if your anniversary date is October 1st, you back up from that, and your report's due July 1st. If you have questions about your annual report, talk to your program officer. And also, we have on there are helpful FAQs regarding reporting, so you can go to this URL. And again, next slide, these slides are going to be made available to you, so don't worry about that. Your annual reports are going to include the activities and findings. What did you say you were going to do, and what did you get done during that 12 months? Products, anything that you produced, like materials that you produced, or conference presentation, or a brochure to advertise your Noyce project, the external evaluation report. Yes, all of you have external evaluators. Sometimes Track 4s only have an advisory board, but we want those reports as well. Excuse me, but that's why that glass of water was there. And a reminder that for any materials that you produce, whether it's a publication or a brochure, you always put your grant number and the NSF disclaimer. And if you want to know what the NSF disclaimer is, go to the PAPG that we talked about a little while ago and look up that word, disclaimer. You will list the collaborators, you have partners, you have school districts, you might have another institution of higher education, and you want to talk about the impact of the project. If there have been any changes or problems, there's a section for you to talk about that. Sometimes you may say, we intended to recruit 12 scholars in the first year and we only got 7. But here's what we're going to do in the next year to make up for that. Plans for the upcoming year, next slide. You will always say, here's the things we're going to focus on. You don't have to go in great detail, but we just want to know what you're thinking is going to happen. There's a section for dissemination, presentations, publications, book chapters, all sorts of things. There's a section for special reporting requirements, and this is where we want you to tell us for tracks 1, 2, and 3, the number of new scholars or fellows, their demographics, males, females, others, their ethnicity or race, any information that helps us understand who your scholars are. We want to know what their STEM degree is that they're working towards, or that perhaps they already have, since they all must earn or have a STEM degree, not an education degree. So these are the kinds of things you're going to put there. And if over time some scholar or fellow withdraws, you're going to tell us that too, and you'll tell us how you're dealing with the repayment. Hopefully you don't have to deal with that in the first year. And as I said, you will upload the evaluation report, the report from your evaluator, or if you have an advisory board, the information from the advisory board. That's usually track 4. Next slide, please. For track 4s, we want to know what you've learned, what data you've collected, how you've analyzed it, and what you're finding. So obviously that's different than with scholars. And we want to know what expectations you have for publications coming out regarding your research. Next slide, please. You are going to hear from ICF in a little bit, and they're going to talk about reporting data that is required in our Noyce monitoring system. If you have a track 2 or track 3, teaching fellows or master teaching fellows, at the same time that you submit the annual report, you will submit an annual cost sharing report. And you always want to make sure that you tell us what you believe is the maximum cost share you're supposed to have after the 5 years. And then you want to tell us how much cost sharing you've had to date. And your final report is due 120 days after the end of your award, the end of that event anniversary date. And again, project outcomes reports, you will submit them, but don't submit them until you're 100% sure you're done. And I would always suggest just talk to your program officer about that. Next slide, please. Ask often and ask early. Talk with your Noyce program officer. When you email us, please include in the subject line the award number. We deal with a lot of awards in a lot of different programs, and that will help us. You need to always follow the guidelines in the solicitation under which you were funded. If there's some of you are going to meet, well, all of you are going to meet Noyce awards that have existed for a number of years, came in under different solicitations, and some of the guidelines for them are different than they are for you. So you always go back to 17541. Take advantage of the regional Noyce conferences. As Jennifer mentioned, there are a number of them that are going virtual. And always plan to attend the National Noyce Summit. And we're going to have some virtual opportunities this year and hope to be together in person. Next slide, next year. We hope you don't have to deal with repayment, but there is a repayment policy. Just know this, if a scholar or fellow leaves the program without having finished their service commitment, they have to repay money. And that money can't go back into your budget to be used to support others. That money goes to the U.S. Treasury. If when that time comes, please contact your program officer. Next slide, and we'll discuss with you how to proceed. Jennifer, we're running a little long, your turn.
Thanks, Kathleen. So we're going to talk now about knowledge generation and Noyce projects. And it's just a little reminder here that Track 4 projects are really all about the research. That's the main focus of the Track 4 projects. But every project in Noyce is invited to be part of the community generating knowledge about this community that can help this community. Next slide, please. So how am I going to find time to generate knowledge when I have all of these other things to do when I'm running my Noyce project? I understand. So the bottom line for this, and you will have written some of this in your proposal, but the opportunities for knowledge generation in Noyce capacity building and Track 1 through 3 projects really have to do with what the PIs and the project team are passionate about. You have a lot to do, and you're going to be able to make a contribution only if this is something you really care about, that you really think is going to make a difference. So my suggestions for you are that you think about the things in your project that you're not sure how to do, that when you look for models, you don't see. So the real challenges of your project are exactly the places where you have the opportunity to generate new understandings and new models that can help the Noyce community as a whole. So please go toward those and think about them as your opportunities to contribute to the research base for Noyce. As you're doing that, it usually works better if a community thinks about theoretical frameworks as a way to establish some common language and key concepts that you can then talk across projects about the kinds of things you're investigating. So look at some important theoretical frameworks that you think are going to be relevant for your project and your interests. Another way to get some knowledge generation happening is to think about what kind of data naturally exists in your project because of the way you're going to do things. Let's say your scholars are engaged in one of the courses in your program and you have them writing reflective journal entries. Is there a way you can organize those journal prompts so that they align with the theoretical framework or a concept that's important to you, And you can think about those not only as part of the scholar's journey, but also your attempt to understand what's happening in your project and share that with the broader community. Finally, I'll say that your particular context is likely to be an understudied context. Your students, your program, all of the individual characteristics there, that exists for this moment in this project. And so therefore, anything you contribute really is a specific and unique contribution, and we need to know about it. So in general, the idea behind knowledge generation for tracks 1 through 3 in capacity building is really thinking about how your project contributes to the collective that is a Noyce community understanding of how to do this work. Next slide, please. Another fruitful thing to do is think about, common misunderstandings that people have about the STEM disciplines. You can use your project to generate an understanding of how to overcome some of these persistent incorrect ideas. And believe me, we need all the ideas we can get about how to do this, because these incorrect ideas are really sticky. So if you could reflect for a minute, if I said to you, when a chemical bond is broken, energy is released, does that strike you immediately as a true statement or a false statement? Just think about that. When a chemical bond is broken, energy is released. You think that's true or you think that's false? I'm going to tell you that those of you who said that was false are probably from my home discipline of chemistry, and that's something we care very much about, and we think of it as a persistent incorrect idea. So studies of that sort that uncover what do people think about core concepts in a discipline, and how can we help them to think about it the way the discipline thinks about it, those are great kinds of studies to do with pre-service and in-service teachers. Emergent properties is often an issue in physics. Natural selection and how that works is often an issue in biology. There are similar things in mathematics and in, sorry, I see a question. There are similar things in mathematics and engineering. Any STEM discipline has its common core disciplinary understandings. And that's one way that the STEM PI can really be an asset to your project, and not just the person you had to have because they were a STEM PI. The correct idea about bonds, because I'm a chemist, is when a bond is broken, energy is released. That is a false statement because I'm a chemist. Next slide, please. Another problem that's an incorrect idea that I see a lot related to research and education in particular is thinking, oh, my project only has, 8 teachers a year. I don't have enough people to do educational research. That incorrect idea really does seem to be persistent. And I'm here to tell you that it isn't true. You have a lot you can contribute. Even if you are quantitatively minded, if you think about your group of scholars as a population rather than as a sample, you can think about descriptive statistics describing that population using effect sizes. And in that way, you can still do the quantitative work you want to do. There's also some really interesting single case approaches to research, often used in disability studies, where you track the progress of individuals across time with multiple measures. So there's a lot you can do, even numerically, with small numbers. And finally, I'll point out, I was talking with you about journaling. The qualitative work and the case study work you can do with a rich understanding of a small group of people is tremendously useful to helping us understand how to do the work of this community. Next slide, please. And finally, I want to say one more time that it's really important when you're going to try to talk in a community about research that you think about using a common language. So in other Noyce projects, as you meet Noyce PIs, you want to talk with them about what concepts are they finding that are important to investigate. Some things I've heard in the past have been the self-efficacy of the Noyce scholars and fellows, the pedagogical content knowledge that these folks develop, and the cultural competence that is necessary for Noyce scholars and fellows to be effective in the classroom. So be talking with each other about what theoretical constructs have been fruitful across the Noyce program so that we can begin to use those in common and make greater strides than we can make as individual projects. Next slide, please. And Kathleen, you have the assessment portion.
So before we go to the quiz, I just want to reiterate that for tracks 1, 2, and 3, your primary purpose is to recruit and support STEM majors completing or who already have a STEM degree to become amazing, outstanding teachers. What Jennifer's sharing is that there are some opportunities that are present within your own work that you may want to study deeper. And it could be that within your own PI team, you feel like you need to invite some more expertise in, and that's okay. You could talk to your program officer about doing that because maybe you want to invite a social scientist or a behavioral scientist or even a fellow STEM educator that has maybe more qualitative expertise than you find in your team, but it is not a requirement. So as with all good classroom activities or anything that's worth doing is worth measuring, we're going to take a quick next slide. Next, thank you. And they're all true and false, but I'd like you to be honest with yourself and answer these. If we were all together, we might collect the answers, but we won't do that. We'll just let you be honest with yourself. Okay, next slide. Noyce scholarships, that's track 1, or stipends, and that's can be in track 2 or 1, can be used to support STEM education majors. True or false? We'll wait a second. Next slide with the answer. This is false. Noyce, mostly false. Noyce scholarships and stipends must be given to recipients that earn or possess a baccalaureate degree. However, in addition to earning a baccalaureate degree in a STEM discipline, scholarship recipients could earn a dual degree in education, and that's the mostly false part because and I know that some of you with new awards are doing dual degrees. They're going to earn a baccalaureate in a science discipline or mathematics, and they're also going to earn an education degree. But Noyce scholars or fellows cannot be individuals that only have an education degree, even if it's a math ed or a science ed degree. Next slide, please. The number of scholars or fellows that the project plans to recruit during the project may change. True or false? So you said you were going to recruit and produce 20 new scholars. Can that number change? Next slide. It's sort of a trick question. The minimum number of scholars that you plan to recruit is, as you said, that should remain the same. However, you can exceed the minimum. So you said you're going to do 20 and you find out you have interest and you can figure out financially how to support 25, that's great. But if the project's just having trouble recruiting the 20, you can't just decide that 14 is good enough. So you would always want to talk to your program officer. And remember, talk early, talk often. Next slide. Next. The number of scholars or fellows that the project plans to recruit each year is underlined, may be different from the actual number recruited. So may your plans for the number you're going to recruit differ from the number you actually recruit. True or false? Next. It's true, because you may get more scholars in a year. You might have said in year one, we're going to do 5, and you get applications and you have 7 that are outstanding. Yeah, you can go ahead and do that. So even though the budget that you put in, budgeted for 5 in the first year and then another 6 in the next year, you can go ahead and fund that 7 in the first year. So it can vary, and that's not unusual. So don't worry about that. If you've got the interest and outstanding individuals, go for it. Next. If a scholar or fellow drops out of the project only needs to recruit another scholar or fellow. True or false? Somebody leaves the program. Next. False. That scholar or fellow has to initiate repayment. And while these are scholarships and not loans, if they can't repay the total amount that they owe initially, then it becomes a loan. And there are specific guidelines about this. So if you have anybody drop out, you want to talk with us. But as I said earlier, you can't use the money you had given them and that they repay. You can't use that in your project. But if you were going to give them 2 years of scholarship money and they dropped out after 1 year, well, that second year, you never gave them that money. So you have that money available. But when they were paid for the first year, you can't use that. It comes back to the U.S. Treasury. Next. Next. If a scholar or fellow does not complete the required teaching service requirement, the institution's policy regarding repayment of the scholarship should be enacted. True or false? Next. True. So in your proposal, you were supposed to put in information, or maybe this came out during negotiations, about what your institution is going to do. This is a legal responsibility of your institution to get that repayment. If you have questions about this, talk with your program officer. Now, we'd be very hopeful that none of you are going to have to do this. But sometimes people find out that education is not for them, and that's a good thing for them to find out. But they do have to repay. And it varies what they have to repay. And that's why I say, get in touch with your program officer. But your institution has to have a policy. So when you sign up a scholar or a fellow, you need a legal document for them to sign that they understand what their service commitment is. And for all that are funded through track 1s, they have to do 2 years for each year that they received scholarship. For track 2 and 3, they're committing to 5 years. Their commitment is 5 years. And again, these commitments are in high need school districts. Next. Noyce scholars or fellows who can't find a job in a high need district can satisfy Noyce requirements for teaching in any school district. So the question is, do they have to teach in a high need school district? Next. This is false. They can't just go teach in any school district. By the way, we have people ask, well, we have a community college and all the students that go there are really high needs, and is it okay if they teach at the community college? No. The Noyce Scholarship Program actually comes out of federal law, and it's about producing outstanding teachers that have degrees in STEM areas to teach in our high need school districts. So they have to teach in a high need school district. Now, the good and the bad news is that the majority of school districts in this nation, unfortunately, are high needs, because if there is one school in the district that is high needs, then the whole district is considered high needs. Notice I didn't say they teach in a high needs school. They have to teach in a high needs school district. You have any questions on that? Just talk with your program officer. Next. Next. Remaining funds in a project's annual budget will carry over to the budget for the next year. So you budgeted $450,000 for the first year, and you had $75,000 left. Does that carry to the next year? Next. Yeah, it does. Even though you gave us budgets by year, the money is fluid. You can use the money that is available to you. Now, you will notice that you might have asked for 1.2 million, and we might have told you that we're going to give you 1.2 million, but we only gave you 600,000 up front. So you could only use 600,000 until the time that you are, the remainder is released to you. And the remainder will be released to you as long as those annual reports are showing progress and you're spending the money and getting the scholars. So you don't really have to worry about it as long as you're doing the work and accomplishing it. But if you budgeted 450,000 the first year and you spend more than that, it's okay. And if you spent less than that, it's okay. But if you're worried, ask your program officer. Next. Grantees may reallocate, that is, move money in the budget into different categories. So you had to put it on different lines and we asked you questions. And now you're actually doing the work. And can you move money around in the budget? True or false? Grantees may move money around. Next. Most of the time you can. In most of the categories you can. But as I mentioned way back earlier, a number of minutes ago, you can't just move money out of category F, participant support. That is a question that has to come in as a request through research.gov, and you should always talk to your program officer ahead of time. But if you need to move some money out of materials and supplies, or you need to move some travel funds around, or you thought you were going to recruit a project manager and you weren't able to get them until the 7th month of the first year, so you have 7 months of money that you didn't use, and you now say, well, you want to use that as part of your induction support, you can move it around. Okay? But if you have a question, you know the answer, ask the program officer. Next. True or false? If the tuition increases over the project, then the project scholarship amount can be increased. So you started out and tuition was $20,000 a year, and now it's bumped up to $25,000 a year. Can you give people a larger scholarship? Next. Yeah, if you can figure out how to do it within the budget, but you don't come to NSF and say, every one of our scholarship, it's all, tuition's gone up by 5,000 and we need 5,000 times the 20 scholars. No, you need to do it within your budget. So you have to move things around, okay? But you can give a larger scholarship than you originally told us, if you can figure out how to do it within your money. Next. All, underlined, Noyce scholars can receive scholarship support for a maximum of 3 years. Next. No, undergraduates can only get junior and senior year, and they need to graduate with their certification. If you have a program of study where your institution doesn't certify at the baccalaureate level, and you work that out with your program officer, then they could get junior, senior, and the next year in order to get certified. But just because they are taking more time, they can't get 3 years. And your fellows are only, your track twos are only going to get 1 year support. And then they get 4 years of a salary supplement, as is true with your master teaching fellows who get 5 years of a salary supplement. Next. Remember, you're going to have the answers in the slides that you're going to receive. And so I thank you, and I hope you will contact your program officers with any questions that you have. And now I'm going to pass the baton to our colleagues from the Division of Grants and Agreements. And many of you know that we program officers recommend awards, but it's the Division of Grants and Agreement that actually makes the awards. So I want to introduce to you Rashawn Farrior, who is the team lead for the Education and Human Resources Directorate. That's the directorate in which the Noyce program resides at NSF. And Jannele Gosey, who is a grant specialist and works hand in glove with the Noyce program. Outstanding people. Jannele is a great resource to you when it comes to concerns about all things budget. So Jannele, take it away.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone. And once again, congratulations on your current award. My name is Jannele Gosey, and as Kathleen stated, I'm the Grants Management Specialist for the Division of Undergraduate Education, as well as the Division for Human Resource Development, which houses your Noyce solicitation, as well as the HBCU solicitation, and many others. As a Grants Management Specialist, I'm responsible for reviewing the financial and administrative portions of the proposals for these two divisions. And as Kathleen stated, obligating the funding for your awards and administrative actions. So on a daily basis, I advise your sponsored research office, also to be called the Office of Sponsored Programs. I advise the program officers, principal investigators, and NSF staff on a daily basis. I process the awards, amendments, interagency agreements, as well as cooperative agreements. I also perform outreaches, internal and external, in person or virtually, twice a year to perform what we call a business assistance meeting. That means we'll come out either virtually or in person to your institution just to make sure you're on track, following the policies and procedures, giving assistance wherever there's needed. It's not an audit. So if you get an email stating that we're coming out, it's not to audit you. We're not in cahoots with the Inspector General. We're just making sure that you're administering your award properly and to provide you any assistance that may be needed, okay? So Kathleen spoke earlier about the annual report, your annual reports and the timelines and that type of thing, but I also wanted to mention the project outcomes report. This report serves as a brief summary prepared specifically for the public of the nature and the outcomes of your project. So this report is really the actual final report. So please do not submit this report if you believe you want to request a supplement, a no-cost extension, or any other type of administrative action for your project. Because once you submit it, it starts the financial and administrative closing of the award. The system verifies your action when you request it. So they're gonna, when you click that you wanna submit it, it's gonna pop up a big screen. So you sure you wanna do this? Because if you do this, you won't be able to submit any other actions in conjunction with this award. So if you click it, it's gonna start shutting your award down. It's gonna send your money back to Treasury. And you don't want to do that if your project is not completed, okay? And if for some reason you do it accidentally, just keep in mind that my branch chief will have to approve the reversal of it, and it could take at least 3 months to reverse it, okay? So do not submit it if you think you're going to need more time or more money, okay? Another thing I wanted to mention is that NSF allows total budget reallocation authority. However, you must follow your institution's policies and procedures, okay? Now, if you need to move money out or within the participant support cost category, you will need to have prior written approval from NSF before doing that. So once again, if you have money in, for example, if you have extra money in materials and supplies and you want to move that to, let's say, you want to put money on your sub-award, you can do that without NSF's permission, but you must follow your own institution's policies and procedures. And if you go to your Office of Sponsored Research or Office of Sponsored Programs and ask to do this and they say, no, you can't do it, you can't come back to NSF and say they won't let you do it, because NSF does not get in the middle. We don't play referee when it comes to your institution's policies and procedures, okay? Okay. PI transfer. Let's talk about that briefly. So if for some reason you decide, all right, you have an award and you say you decide to go to another institution, please keep in mind that the award that you were just granted does not personally belong to you. It's your institution's award. So you must negotiate with your institution as well as the institution that you're transferring to if you would like to take that award with you. So it's up to your own institution to grant you permission to move that. Once again, NSF does not referee that process. It's between you and the institution, okay? The NSF PAP guide, that will be your best friend. It has answers from pre to post award. I mean, it's so much information. So it would be very helpful if you were to research, if you have a question, check out the PAP guide first. And if you can't find your answer in there, then reach out to your program officer, or you can contact me or have your sponsor research office to contact me. But that's going to be your best friend. So I always advise PIs and sponsored research officers to download a copy of it to their home screen so it can be easily accessible. And you can just do a quick search, word search for what you're looking for, okay? The lines of communication, the PIs, they typically communicate, you all typically communicate with the program officers and your sponsored research officers, or maybe you may also know them as the Office of Sponsored Programs. DGA, which is my office, we communicate with the program officers and the sponsored research officers. But that does not mean you cannot contact me. I'm always available. And if you have questions, I will advise you to ask them early, ask them often. We do not keep a tally of how many times you've called or emailed. We want you to get the job done, and we want you to get the job done correctly. No one wants to sit in the office with the Inspector General, okay? So that's all that I have. I'm not sure my colleague is on just yet, or if he's going to be able to make it, because I know he had a previous meeting, but if, like I said, if you have any questions, please reach out to me early and often. And once again, congratulations on your award.
Thank you, Jannele. I think we can move on if Rashawn is not able to join. You can go ahead and advance the slide. Okay, for this final portion of the meeting, we are going to take a look into the Noyce annual data collection. And you can advance the slide. So just quickly, I'll run through some introductions. My name is Maggie Carlin. I am the ICF project manager for this annual data collection. I am here today with Patrick Higgins, who is the lead technical support team member for this effort, and he will also be co-presenting with me today. He'll present the second half of this presentation, and then also Joseph Asari. He is on the line today. He won't be speaking, but just want to throw his name out there as both Patrick Higgins and Joseph, Pat and Joe, respectively. They handle a lot of the technical support questions that we receive. So these are names that you may get to know throughout this reporting. So next slide. So just a quick overview or run through of our agenda. I am going to do an overview of the Noyce annual data collection and just sort of explain what it is and what to expect. And then I'm going to turn the presentation over to Patrick Higgins, who is going to take a deeper dive into the actual survey questionnaire and discuss the data variables that we collect so you know what to expect and what to prepare for. And this run through is going to be divided by track 1, scholarship and stipend award reporting, and then we kind of combine track 2 and 3 to discuss the teaching fellowship and the master teaching fellowship award reporting. And then we'll end with a Q&A, which looks like we will have some time for the Q&A. And as a reminder, I believe we're still just typing them into the Q&A box, and we will respond accordingly. So next slide. And then we'll start the overview. So next slide. So first, what is the Noyce annual data collection? It is a separate data collection from the annual report that you submit. This is part of a program monitoring effort. The data that you provide is used by NSF to potentially meet federal reporting requirements, as well as for evaluation purposes to measure progress towards any strategic program goals. The data is always viewed at an aggregate level. So if you are reporting any PII data for your recipients, that's never compromised because it's viewed as an aggregate. This collection is administered by ICF, as I've mentioned our company before. We are a third-party contractor, so we administer this data collection on behalf of NSF. We provide the online system that you use for this collection, and we also provide the technical support. So we are here to assist you throughout the reporting with this effort. So next slide. So just a run through of our timeline for this collection. The collection typically opens in mid-September, so that would be this upcoming September 2020. It is open for about 12 weeks, and we close in early December. We also collect data for a specific reporting period, which you will notice doesn't align necessarily with the academic year. So the reporting period for which we collect data, and again, this references the upcoming 2020 cycle for which we will be collecting data. The period covers September 1st, 2019, and ends August 31st, 2020. And what you can expect is consistent reminders from us, the Noyce technical support team. And again, support from our team. We are here to help you with this reporting requirement. And emails that come from support@noyceweb.org. I like to highlight our email address since we are, again, not a part of NSF, so you haven't heard from us yet, and it is a separate entity, and we don't, have an NSF domain email address. So next slide, please. So this is just a high-level sort of helicopter view of the data we collect. And again, Patrick Higgins will take a deep dive into the survey questionnaire and the data variables. But just as an overview, we collect post-secondary institution data, which would be your award data, your award institution and your partner institutions if you have them. Your school districts being your partner school districts. If you are a track 2 or 3 award, we collect information about the nonprofit organizations you may have partnered with. And then Noyce recipients, which is really the bulk of the reporting that you will do. This would be your scholarship, stipend, teaching fellows, and master teaching fellows. And the reason that I say it's the bulk of the reporting that you do is because we essentially, you begin reporting for them once the recipient has entered the program, and then you continue reporting for those recipients through the completion of their teaching service requirement. So it's a progression that you are reporting. And I like to highlight that just to kind of be mindful of the timeline of what it takes to complete this reporting, which I will get into in more detail in the next couple of slides. And then finally, if you are a scholarship and stipend award, we also collect data on your Noyce interns. So next slide. So again, just a quick run through of communications and more highlighting what to expect regarding this reporting. We initially send a pre-launch email about 2 weeks before the opening of the actual collection. So in the case of the upcoming collection, the pre-launch email will probably arrive late August to very early September. And then the next communication you will receive from us is the opening email, which we will send on the day of the opening of the collection. And that email will include all of your instructions that you will need for accessing the online system. We include the link. We include instructions regarding your login credentials and creating a password, and then some other just sort of helpful information about the reporting and reminders about the timeline, meaning the due date. Then after about 2 weeks, if you have not logged into the system to start this reporting, we may call you by phone. We are not trying to pester you. We just want to make sure you're receiving our emails, you're not having issues accessing the system, and just, checking in and making sure that, you're on track for this reporting. And then finally, just the reminders you can expect from us. We send a few throughout the collection cycle. And again, we don't want to pester you, but we just want to keep this reporting on your radar. So we send a midpoint reminder, and then as the data collection deadline nears, we send you a few more frequent emails about completing the reporting by the deadline. So next slide. So this slide is just sort of to give you a sense of the life cycle of your reporting. So in your first reporting year, you actually report baseline data only, so not the full survey questionnaire. Baseline data consists of post-secondary institution data regarding graduation rates. If you are a Master Teaching Fellowship Award, you actually don't report baseline data since your program isn't geared towards helping recipients earn a degree. So for Master Teaching Fellowship Awards, your first reporting year is actually September 2021. But for everyone else, it's this upcoming September, and you will report baseline data only. Then for your next reporting year, that is when you complete the full survey questionnaire. So all of your post-secondary institution data beyond just the baseline data, your school district information, nonprofit information, and then of course all of the recipient data. And then going forward, and this really again is just sort of a high-level view of what to expect going forward in terms of your reporting after those first initial years. You will continue reporting on post-secondary institutions and school districts and nonprofits as long as they are active with your project. And then for the recipients, you continue reporting for your recipients until they have met one of two metrics. Either they have met the teaching service requirement, or if they have unfortunately left the program for whatever reason. So I like to highlight that because there isn't really a concrete timeline for when that could end. That's dependent on the activity of your award, how many recipients you fund, the type of recipients, the length of time they have to complete their teaching service requirement. So there is some variability, and I would emphasize as well, there is very much an importance for tracking those recipients so you can be compliant with this reporting. So next slide. So again, this slide is just sort of emphasizing the time frame that it can take to complete that recipient data reporting. And this is all just straight out of the solicitation. So if you have scholarship recipients, they're expected to teach 2 years for each year of support, and they have up to 8 years to do it. If you're a stipend recipient, you are expected to teach for 2 years, and you have up to 4 years to do it. If you're a teaching fellowship recipient, you are expected to teach for 4 years, and you have up to 6 years. And then Master Teaching Fellow, you are expected to teach 5 years, and you have up to 7 years. So I like to highlight that just to be mindful that you have, yes, the years reporting requirement, but you also have some wiggle room for the recipients to complete that. So it might just not work in a 1-in-1 ratio. And to be mindful again of the time it can take for them to complete it, and the time it then takes you to complete this program monitoring reporting. So next slide. So this final slide for me is just kind of a last sort of encouragement, if you will, to not wait until the last minute to start this reporting. We have our deadline in December, and we encourage you not to wait until then to start this reporting, because you may get into it and realize you have quite a few questions, and we want to be able to help you along the way, not have last minute stress. And certainly that time period around December is very busy for us, so we want to be able to turn questions around as soon as possible. So the earlier you ask, I just recommend that would alleviate any stress as you are completing this reporting. But we are also here to help you if you wait till the last minute as well. So with that, we can go ahead and advance the slide. And at this point, Patrick Higgins, Pat, is going to take over, and he's going to do kind of a deeper dive into the survey questionnaire and run through the data variables that we collect for each track.
Thanks, Maggie. So I'm going to go over the survey questionnaire and provide a lot of information. We'll start with the scholarship and stipend awards, but the first two sections, which are post-secondary institutions and school districts, are about the same for all award types. So we're only going to cover those once. Next, please. When you log in, this is the main menu, and you'll see it looks the same for everybody. In the middle there are the different sections. For baseline awards, you'll just see post-secondary institutions and what is currently number 7, the send authorized file submission to NSF. At the top, it has the reporting period, so you know the dates that the collection is covering. Underneath that, it has your NSF institute, your award name, and the award ID. And that green box toward the left has helpful links that we'll cover towards the end. Next. The first section is post-secondary institutions. So this is where you'll add the data for all partner institutions of your award. For new awards, you'll click the link that's circled, add institutions. For returning awards or awards that have already saved an institution, you'll find all the institutions you've saved listed here. And so they'll be listed forward each year, and some of the basic data such as the name and state will be carried forward, but the data that needs to be updated each year will be blank. Next. So this is what the data entry page looks like. For post-secondary institutions, we really want to know, we ask what, for baseline data, we ask what, how many undergraduates that's majored in STEM graduated, having prepared to become K through 12 STEM teachers. And then we ask how many post-baccalaureates completed the teacher preparation program preparing to become K through 12 STEM teachers, and how many career changers completed the preparation program to become K through 12 STEM teachers. Career changers are a subset of post-baccalaureates that were in a different occupation than or going into teaching. The baseline data is collected before you're really, we open this up so that you're not entering 2 years of baseline data, your first year reporting. I think I saw this in the Q&A. It's before your program really gets started. It's just so you can enter your baseline data in the year that's occurring rather than having to enter 2 years in the following year. But once you've entered those 3 spots, those 3 questions for baseline data, that's all you need to do. You click save, and if you have other institutions, you can enter their data, and if not, you can submit the survey. For awards in their second year or MTF awards, Master Teaching Fellow awards, you'll have to enter the full questionnaire. So it'll be those same questions, but for the current reporting period. And you'll also be asked about applicants and how many different applicants you received, how many, what their average GPA was, and faculty involvement, what their activities were. Next, please. The next section, which is the same for all recipient types, type of awards, is school districts. And here you'll add any partner school districts that your award had. Any districts that have been added will be listed, and any new districts that need to be added can be done so through the Add School District link. And you'll continue to see districts added. Any district that's been added will be continued to be listed here as you complete the survey. Next. Data requested for the districts is very basic. It's just the district's name and location, and then if it was involved. If it was, how many schools in the district were involved. And if it wasn't, you just have to click no and save. And that's all you have to do for school districts. Next. So this is where we begin the recipient data. And as Maggie said, it is the longest part of the survey. It will be the most time consuming. You'll have to enter the most data for your recipients. So again, please plan accordingly so you're not caught off guard that how much you have to do to put in their data. We'll start with scholarship recipients. And on this survey, those are defined as individuals that first began receiving funding as an undergraduate in a STEM discipline and does not already hold a degree. They are enrolled in a teacher preparation program and they received Noyce funding during the current reporting period. To add new recipients, you'll click the link at the bottom, and any recipient that has been added in the past whose funding hasn't ended will be listed in this section. So you can click on their name and update them for the current year. Next, please. So this is what the data entry page looks like for scholarship recipients, and it looks the same if you didn't notice from the other two sections. It looks very much the same for all the different recipient types. You'll see that you'll have some text boxes, some multiple choice questions, some just select the bubble. But it's pretty basic data entry, and we try to make it very straightforward so that you know what's being asked and when. Next. For scholarship recipients, we collect their demographic information, which includes their gender, race, and ethnicity, their academic data, like their year, their major, GPA, and any programs they're involved with, how much funding they received and how many terms of support, how many terms they were supported, what level in subject areas they intend to teach at. We ask if they've completed the teacher preparation program and if they have obtained certification or licensure. And then we ask their current status, and if they're teaching, we ask, you have to mark where they were teaching, the school name, the school district, district's high need criteria, and the grade level and subject area. Next. The next recipient section is for stipends. And on this survey, again, stipend recipients are individuals that first began receiving Noyce funding as a post-baccalaureate. They are enrolled in a teacher preparation or certification program, and they received Noyce funding during the current reporting period. To add new stipend recipients, you click the link, and if there's any stipend recipients who've been added and their funding has not ended, they'll be listed in this section. Next. The data entry is the same. It's almost identical to that scholarship recipients. The data entry page will look the same for almost all recipient types. Next. The only major differences between the data requested for stipend and scholarship recipients is, since stipend recipients are post-baccalaureates, we ask for their degree data. And since some can be coming back to get their degree after being in the field, or we ask if they were a career changer, and if they were, what their previous occupation was. Next. And so, as I mentioned before, in those sections, we list them until their funding has ended. When their funding has been marked as ending, you'll find them in the post-scholarship stipend follow-up section. So if you're going through and you're wondering what happened to that person you had last year, this is most likely what happened, that their funding was marked as ending and they were moved to this section. And here you'll find them until, you'll have to update their data annually until they have completed their teaching requirements. Next. The data entry looks the same, but the data requested is a little different, where it's more pared down and focused on the completing the program, completing their teaching preparation program, certification, and their teaching requirement. Next. The last section for scholarship and stipend survey is the summer intern section. And here you'll add any individuals that participated in an undergraduate Noyce internship. This list is historical, so once you add someone here, they'll continue to be listed here for the rest as long as you're reporting. If they participate multiple years, you'll just have to click their name and update them for the current reporting period. To add a new recipient, you'll click the Add Intern Recipient. And for interns, you'll be entering some demographic information, some academic information, and what type of internship they participated in. Next, please. Now we'll go into the Teaching Fellowship and Master Teaching Fellowship Awards. Next. You'll see the main menu looks the same. The only difference being the type of sections listed. Now you'll have nonprofit organizations, which these awards have to provide. Next. Since post-secondary and institutions and school districts are the same, we're just going to start with the nonprofit section. And this is where you'll add any organizations that were partnered with your award. They'll again be listed, it's very similar to the school district section. They'll be listed annually. You'll have to just make the minor updates. So if you have to add a new organization, you click the link to add nonprofit organization. Next. And the data entry is pretty basic. We're just asking for the organization's name, the location, and if they were involved or not. If no, you can click save and you'll be done with the update for that year. And if they were involved, you have to select the type of activities they were involved with. Next, please. So we're back to recipient data. Again, this will be the most time-consuming part, so please plan accordingly. We want to stress that because you don't want to sneak up on you that you have to enter your recipient data, and it seems like there's only 3, but it could still take longer than you think. Teaching fellowship recipients are individuals that do not already hold a teaching certificate or license, and they haven't taught previously. They are enrolled in a master's degree program leading to certification licensure, and they receive Noyce funding during the current reporting period. This section has a historical list, so any fellows that you've added will continue to be listed here. So once you've added one recipient, you can just update that name by clicking the name each year. To add new fellowship recipients, you'll click the link. Next, please. And you'll see a very familiar data entry page. Again, we try to keep it very similar to all the award types so that there's not a lot of changes. Next, please. The data collected for teaching fellows includes their demographic information, again, their gender, race, and ethnicity, their academic information, degrees held, the GPA, program activities, how much funding support they received and how many terms they were supported, what levels they intend to teach at, what subject areas, if they completed their master's degree and obtained certification or licensure, and then their teaching placement information, their current status, and if they're teaching, their school name, high district criteria. The one thing I really want to point out for teaching fellows is this survey questionnaire has 2 different funding sections. So the first funding section is what we refer to as stipend funding support. And this is funding received to support the recipient as they are completing their master's degree. The other question is salary supplement. And this is funding received while they are completing their teaching requirements. So as you're entering data, you'll see both questions on the questionnaire, but that's how we define them. And if there's any questions about that, please let us know so that we can make sure it's entered in the right section. Next, please. The last recipient section is Master Teaching Fellowship Fellows. And this again is a historical list. And teaching fellows are individuals who are currently a certified licensed mathematics or science teacher, already holding at least a master's degree. They are participating in activities to become a master teacher, and they received Noyce funding during the current reporting period. Again, it's a historical list, so anyone that you've added will continue to be listed in this section. And if you have a new master fellow, you'll just have to click the link. Next, please. And again, this is the data entry page. It's the same as the other 3 recipient sections. So next. There's a typo. It's supposed to say differences in master teaching versus teaching fellowship data. So I apologize for that. But the data collected is just about the same as it is for the teaching fellows, with a couple of additions. We ask if this recipient previously received a Noyce award. We also ask how many years of teaching they had before joining the Noyce program, and how many of those years were in a high need school district. And then we ask if the recipient was recognized as a master teacher. Next. So those are the recipient data sections. Again, those will be the bulk of your data entry time. But as you're going through, on the main menu, we have links to some helpful resources. In that green box, you can see the help and instructions link, which will help you get you started on the survey. FAQ, which has a lot of the common questions that we've received and a lot of common issues that we've helped PIs with as they're going through data entry. So it's a really good first stop if you have a question. The respondent contact info, you can update the contact information for the respondent. Print and download data lets you see the data that's been previously entered on the survey. Add comments and feedback links so you can provide additional information if needed, and a contact us link which contacts Noyce technical support. Next, please. In addition to those links, at the top of each data entry page, there is a help with this screen link, which opens a pop-up that has additional information in terms about the data being requested on that page. Next. So if there's any questions or issues while you're completing the survey, Noyce technical support is available to provide any assistance we can. Our email is support@noyceweb.org. Our phone is 800-665-8961, extension 1, and we're available between 9 and 5 p.m. Eastern. Next. So this is typically where we open up for questions. I know the Q&A is down at the bottom, so we'll look through there. The other question I saw was what ICF stands for. It doesn't have a very accurate acronym anymore. It started about 50 years ago as the Inner City Fund, but as the business progressed and their practices shifted, the acronym the letters remained, but the acronym stayed less accurate. But so now we're just mostly ICF.
So this is Karen. Hi, Patrick. Thank you. I was hoping that we could answer this question publicly, whoever just answered the number 18. Mm-hmm. Patrick, I don't know where it is. Okay, here it is. It looks like this reporting year is off by 3 months from the reporting year for the annual reports to NSF. Is that right? Our NSF annual reports would be due in July and these are in September, but they technically report in the same academic year. Can you answer that?
I'll speak to the survey. The survey starts in September 1, and that starts the academic year for that fall. So this coming survey will be covering September 1, 2019. And we know the academic years can be pushed a little different, but it's basically the 2019-2020 academic year. So fall 2019 through summer 2020.
So I'll pick up on that. Thank you. That's very helpful to me too. The reason that they're not quite matched is because your annual reports would be due on the anniversary of when you are given the grant. So they could be spread out from anywhere from March to April up through August. You don't know, but you would report on the same data. It's just you don't have to report quite the same on the annual report. You're reporting about the work that you're doing and who your scholars are, et cetera. The Noyce or the ICF reports is going to be much more detailed about each individual scholar. So they're kind of different forms of reports, and therefore it's okay that they're not exactly matched up. Okay, Maggie or Patrick, are there any questions that were asked that you'd like to bring up verbally to talk more about than just typing? I'll let you both.
There was a question that I think was referred to us referencing LEA reporting, and I am not familiar with that acronym. Afra asked that question. Can we speak to the data collected from LEA?
Yeah, so LEAs are local educational agencies. So that's the school systems and districts that they're working with. So LEAs are school systems they're working with. And I think you'd addressed that with Patrick was talking about what you have to type in for your school systems. Do I understand that the school systems themselves don't actually have to enter anything? You just need to enter the school systems in, is that right?
Right, so you only have to report in that school district section on the partners. So it does come up that sometimes a teaching recipient doesn't end up teaching in a partner school district. And you report that as part of the recipient reporting, but you don't report that school district as part of the partner school district since they aren't a partner. But for any partner school, it's pretty simplistic. It's just the name of the district and whether or not they're active in the project and like the number of schools that are involved. So it's very basic information that we collect for the districts.
Okay, thank you, Maggie. That's helpful. Patrick?
I just want to add that as you're typing it, as you're entering the teaching data for the recipients, what school district they're in, you also have to provide the high need criteria. And there's 3 options listed and a section for other, but the 3 options, like teacher turnover, poverty rates, and teachers teaching out of the subject area that they were taught and that they were certified in are the 3 that are listed. But those the only other thing that we ask as you're providing the teaching information for the recipients.
Okay, that's very helpful. Other
Karen,
things, Maggie? Yes.
Karen,
Kathleen?
I wanted to go ahead and ask Maggie, and then I'll make my comment.
Okay, I thought we'd finish up with whatever ICF questions there were, and then we go into the you all.
There was
Okay.
a question from Gary Martin that I answered regarding clarifying teaching service requirement, but his final question was whether the master's degree has to be in STEM education if they have a undergraduate STEM degree. I believe that it does, but I think it's a good one to double check with you all.
The master's degree does not have to be in a STEM discipline because they must already have. If it's a master teaching fellow, then if they're just teaching in the area and they're certified in the area, then an education master's will serve. If that's for master teaching fellows. For teaching fellows, they have to already have a STEM degree. So no, the master's does not have to be a disciplinary STEM degree.
Okay. He didn't say STEM discipline, he said
STEM education.
STEM education.
Yeah.
It does not.
Okay.
Does not.
All right.
It could be in curriculum and instruction.
Okay.
And then there was a question about the baseline data. So for example, a brand new awardee in September, they would just enter what? They wouldn't have anything to enter because they don't have any. I thought I wasn't clear on that. What would
They
put in?
report, yeah, so that's a change that we made in 2016 to kind of just, we've always collected baseline data. It's intended to kind of alleviate the effort that an award has to put into reporting in that first year because they were reporting a baseline data that was a year before the current reporting period and then additionally all of the current year reporting data. So for baseline data, no, you're not reporting anything like you haven't funded any recipients, so you're not reporting on that or like faculty involved. It is, your baseline data it varies depending on your award, but it is essentially about like the number of graduates from a STEM major or the number of master's degree graduates. Again, it varies a little bit depending on your award, but it is a very limited data collection that you will do this coming September 2020. The next data collection, September 2021, is where you do the full data collection, everything that we collect.
Okay, that's helpful. There was a question about ethnicity and how you report ethnicity. I don't know if that is it just obvious on the group.
Yeah, and I saw that question come through, and I wasn't sure if that was directed towards
I don't know.
the annual report or for the this program monitoring data collection. But for the program monitoring data collection, we follow OMB guidelines for reporting race and ethnicity. And if I can, I don't have them memorized, the guidelines.
That's fine.
But essentially,
look it up on OMB, right? Which is
Ethnicity is just Latino and Hispanic or not Latino, Hispanic or not reported.
Okay.
And race is further broken down, but ethnicity is just Latino, Hispanic or not.
Or not. Okay. Great. Thank you. I don't have any other questions I've seen for the ICF folks. Kathleen, Jennifer.
I wanted to spin off of, thank you, ICF team, and make two comments. One is that capacity building does not have to report to ICF. So I don't want the capacity building projects to be wondering about that, but it's good as a capacity building project to now know that if you in the future develop a Noyce project and submit it and are funded, these are the kinds of things. The other comment I wanted to make is to our track 4 PIs that have stayed with us. And of course, the track 4s don't have to report anything to ICF, but as the track 4s were listening, they were probably thinking along the lines, because I've had questions in the past of, ooh, what a treasure trove of data. We'd like to use some of that data, but that's not possible in this way. We cannot provide to you information from the data monitoring system because that is not part of the equation. That is all private. But what you do know from having sat and listened to the types of data that they're collecting is the types of data that the projects themselves have and are reporting. So either related to your current track 4, or if the wheels were turning about a future track 4, you know now some of the types of data that the track 1s, 2s, and 3s are collecting, and that you might be able to partner with them to access their data. But ICF and NSF could not provide you with data from the data monitoring system. So I just wanted to share that.
And did you mention, Kathleen, on the annual reports that we don't ask the people to give the names?
I did not mention that, but we are not looking for the names. We are looking for demographics about the students, and we do want to know what their STEM degree is in, but we do not need the particular scholar's names. And I hope that if we have questions about any of the slides that that Jennifer used or that I used, or any of the comments that Jannele made, that this is a great time to ask those questions, albeit you can always send us emails.
I wanted to give Maggie and Patrick, and I forgot who your third person is, notice that in the chat, someone said they wanted to thank you. You've been exceptionally responsive, and that's been my experience, that you guys are wonderful, and we thank you for that. So if you guys, you new awardees, when you start working on your report to Noyce Web, please feel free to reach out to them. They'll be there. All right, I'm still open to more questions. We have no questions, so maybe we'll wait a few minutes and see if anybody would like to ask a question, or if some of us here think of some questions that arose and you want to speak to. I've already brought up a couple of those, and maybe we can leave the slides so that people can see all of us. we want to come on live, so we could quit sharing the slides.
I'm going to take a moment, since we don't have a question yet, to add to something that Jannele was sharing about transferring of awards. And these awards are to your institution, not you, the PI. And in most cases, as Jannele said, if you changed institutions, then your institution and the receiving institution would talk about you taking the award with you. However, there is another factor when it comes to Noyce tracks 1, 2, and 3, and that is you, in getting this award, told us about the pool at your institution of scholars that you, of individuals that you could draw from. You told us about the program of study at your current institution that you were going to provide. You told us about all the supports at your current institution that you're going to provide. So it's not that easy for a Noyce award to just pick up and go to another institution, because the pool may not be there, the supports may not be there. The district collaboration and commitment. So we hope that that won't be the situation for you. I will tell you, I had one recently where they talked about doing a transfer, and then after we talked, they decided that it would stay where it was. Their PI was going to another institution, but one of the co-PIs would become the PI at the same institution we'd already given the grant to, but they gave a sub-award, which they had to put in through research.gov, to the new institution so that the previous PI could still work on the project. So you don't have to remember all of that. What you want to remember is, if that situation presents itself where you are going to another institution, talk with your program officer and we'll help you work out the best way to navigate that. What we really hope is that you'll be at your institution for the next 5 to 7 years working on this and reporting to Maggie and her team and reporting to your program officers, but more importantly, supporting amazing individuals that are going to serve in our high needs school districts.
Thank you. There's a question in the question box, and I thought of this question several times and didn't know if this is the right time to talk about it. General comments on modifications necessary due to the K-12 disruptions due to COVID. Have you been answering that question, Kathleen, in general, and maybe you could, or Jennifer, take that briefly, or say, talk to your program officer if that's the right answer, whichever.
Talk to the program officer is the right answer. NSF is trying to be as creative as we can, while you're being as creative as you can, to keep things going. And you, as a new awardee, know that for every one of you, you had to submit to us a COVID-19 contingency plan as part of the negotiations. Obviously, we've never asked for those before. So that was the opportunity for you to think deeply about how you might move forward. Having said that, what is true today wasn't true 4 weeks ago. Things keep changing. So the good news is that you've thought about it, but the other kind of news is that districts that thought they were going to go aren't going to go face-to-face. Districts that said they weren't going to go face-to-face are going to go 2 days a week. There are all sorts of configurations that you're having to deal with. So get in touch with your program officer and talk with them. And by the way, I make this comment for myself, not for my fellow program officers, although it could be true for a few of them. I appreciate it if you send me an email and send it again if I haven't responded in 2 business days. I am always embarrassed when I find an email that is weeks old or even months old. we all are very busy. You're very busy, and we want to answer you. So if you send an email and you don't get an out of office message, which you would get today, but if there are 2 business days between the out of office and then please resend it and resend it again. I appreciate it. I'm not offended. I don't feel like you're being impatient. I would rather you be impatient than miss out on me responding to you in a time, what I wish was a timely fashion. And in the first years at NSF, I was really good about answering everybody right away. I look back fondly on those days.
Thank you, Kathleen. Have you had any questions about, like, if you have a 2-year track 1 and the students, because of COVID, can't even get into the classroom and student teach, is there any leeway about the 2-year rule, or we still have that rule, right? That would be a program officer question.
Well, there are some institutional and even state things that have to be attended to, and that is that for certification, your state may require something called clinical practice or student teaching or whatever. But we at NSF don't define whether that's in-person, face-to-face. We've never defined it. So I know that there are some projects and some institutions that are working with they think they're gonna have to work with their states to redefine what clinical or student practice looks like. Certainly the pool of students that you are about to work with are going to have a skill set that previous pools have not had. And that is how to work effectively with online teaching and learning. So I think that there's some things that need to be worked out, what I'm going to call it the local level, meaning institution and state certification. But we're open to what you make happen.
Okay, thank you. All right, the best way to reach a program officer is through email or schedule a phone call. I can answer that. Email. So I think almost exclusively all of us would say that we tend to check our emails all the time and are less likely to answer a phone call. So I think Kathleen mentioned earlier, if you could put your award number in the subject line and send us an email, and then if you haven't heard from us in 2 or 3 days, resend the email, and if you haven't heard from us a few days, resend the email. If we need to talk to you in person, we'll schedule a phone call, so we will then contact you. That's such a great question. Thank you. Somebody asked, is the program manager the same thing as a program officer? Jennifer, why don't you answer that? You haven't answered any.
Sure. I think they're just different terms used for the same thing. The title that program officers use is typically program officer or program director, but I'll answer to program manager too. It doesn't really matter.
You'd think we could have figured this out by now, but my 3 years, I've been called all three a lot. Yes. Okay, I'm getting more questions, so I'm gonna bring them up for people. It looks like another one for Jennifer or Kathleen. Just to clarify, Track 1 awards include a 2-year commitment in a high-need school district, while Track 2 awards is a 4-year commitment. Not quite, but you're close. And if you want to open it up, Kathleen or Jennifer, do you want to?
Jennifer, do you want to answer that one?
Can you see it?
My answer is read the solicitation carefully to which you applied, and then ask Kathleen.
So basically, for Track 1, for each year that the individual receives scholarship support, they owe 2 years of service teaching in a high-need school district, all right? So if they get support in their junior year and their senior year, then they owe 4 years. If they only got support in their senior year, they owe 2 years. If they only got support in their post-baccalaureate, because remember, track 1 is scholars and stipends, then if they only get 1 year support in 1 year, then they owe 2 years. So now for track 2, those individuals will have 1 year where they are earning a master's degree with certification, and they're supported in doing that. And then they have 4 years of commitment where they must teach in a high-need school district. And during those 4 years, every year, they receive a salary supplement from the award.
Nice, thank you. We have a question in the chat, which is a post-bac year can be 14 months. Is that correct?
Yeah, we
Yeah, that's
defined a year as 14 months so that you can do summer, academic year, and summer. That was our way of giving you more time.
It's kind of sad as a math person that I'm having to tell people all the time, 14 months is a year. Sure, that counts. Okay, other questions? We still have a few minutes, but if we're finished, we'll give people a chance to go get lunch and stuff for their, till we start again at 2. Any other, I think I don't show any questions. Am I missing anyone? All of you, ICF folks, and Rashawn, Jennifer, anybody? More comments, questions?
It says, Mike Egan says, I have one.
Oh, okay. Okay, I guess then we'll wait for Mike to type in his questions if he can't say it out loud. Sorry, Mike, I wish we could have you say it out loud.
I understand that scholarships can count toward cost of attendance. Yeah, the amount of money that you give a scholar can be up to the total cost of attendance. And the total cost of attendance includes many things. Again, I'll go to what Jennifer said about look at the solicitation and just in the solicitation, search for cost of attendance, and it'll give you a reference to go look at, which will tell you about fees and books. And I'm not going to say all the things because I want you to go look, but you can give up to the total cost of attendance.
So the next question, Kathleen, how can we track room and board if they're living off campus? That's their job, huh?
Yeah, I'm going to defer to that, the total cost of attendance definition, to go look at that, because that's getting into legal things that it's
Right.
better that I don't try to explain.
The cost of attendance is, you should use the one that is given and provided for at your university. Universities always say what the cost of attendance would be for their university. And
Yeah,
there's some other issues, right, in our
But-
Q&A.
but in
FAQs.
but in the solicitation that they were funded under, if they search for cost of attendance, it's going to refer them to a Higher Education Act where the cost of attendance is defined. And that's what I'm saying they need to look at in terms of the question that just came in about room and board.
Gotcha. Next one, our promissory notes.
I'm not being obtuse, but when
No.
things are in code, it is not good for a non-lawyer, that would be me, or any of our program officers, to try to explain what's in code.
Let's see, our promissory notes required to be notarized.
That's an institutional decision.
Okay, that's an institutional decision, whoever asked that question. And then for us newbies, how do we get samples of application materials, contracts, et cetera, that already exist, other than seeking these through the program officer?
This is a perfect question, and you wouldn't ask these of the program officer. This is a perfect question because in a few minutes or so, we're all going to go into a bigger meeting where you're going to connect with, and that's what we want to happen. You are going to connect with PIs that have been running Noyce projects for a number of years. and you want to get to know them and network with them and ask them for samples of those kinds of documents. But ultimately, you will want to go to your legal department in order to actually draft that kind of a thing. But networking and asking other PIs for those kinds of things is exactly what the remainder of the day, after you get a little lunch, is going to be about.
Great answer, and great way now to move on to Jennifer, not Jennifer, other Jennifer. She's ready to close us out.
Great. Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Jennifer Carinci, and I'm a program director for STEM education at AAAS. And I just wanted to let you know what's going to be happening next in the program. So first, welcome new PIs to the block. I know some of you have been veterans for years, and this is just a new grant for you, but some of you, this is your first NSF Noyce grant. So congratulations to you again, and want to let you know what's happening next. So for the rest of our time together today, you'll be able to join some other veteran PIs and be able to have some time for conversations together with them, as well as more time for smaller conversations with NSF Noyce program directors, and to hear in some lessons learned panels from some of your colleagues as well. So my colleague is going to drop a link into the chat here to be able to go into the next meeting. You can also follow along in your individual agendas and click on the link that was next to the welcome session piece there. So click the link next to the welcome session right after this from your agenda or directly from the meeting here. And you can just go ahead and hang out in that link. We will let you in at around 2:00 p.m. for when the formal welcome address and rest of the block party programming will start. So again, just want to let everybody know to go ahead and click over either from the chat or follow along in the agenda access document that was sent and click the welcome address link, and you'll be able to hang out in there until we start at 2. So you can grab a break, refuel, and come on back for the rest of our block party. So thank you,
Jennifer,
everyone, for joining.
Jennifer, can I just say one more quick thing? I want to thank ICF, the ICF folks and the DGA folks again for coming. It was wonderful to have you. Okay, I'm done.
Absolutely, and I'll go ahead and thank our NSF program directors for their informative program, and the NSF finance folks who you'll be working with closely. So thanks, everybody, and thanks to ICF.